Welcome to Kitbag, the ultimate destination for football fans. Whether you're cheering for Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, or any other top club, we've got your team's colors running through our veins. From official replica kits to custom player prints of your favorite stars like Ronaldo, Messi, and Kane, Kitbag is your one-stop shop for all things football. Powered by Fanatics, we deliver to over 180 countries, ensuring you get the gear you need fast. For true football passion, think Kitbag. Visit kitbag.com today. That's kitbag.com. Kitbag.
Are you ready to take control of your health? At 4U Health, we believe wellness and lab testing should be accessible, inclusive, and yes, fun. With our tech-powered at-home lab test, you save time and money while feeling your best. Say goodbye to long waits and office visits. Check your health on your own terms with 4U Health. Visit 4uhealth.com today and free yourself from traditional medicine. That's the number 4uhealth.com.
Hey, Justice Pending listeners. So, before the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, this was going to be our first episode. But as you know, we ended up doing 5 episodes on that murder. We decided to go ahead and release our original first episode, which explains how Susan and I met, our love of true crime podcasts, and all things true crime, right now. As always, thanks for listening. Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Thanks for joining us. Well, here we are, episode 1 of our brand new show. Welcome to Justice Pending, everyone.
Amazing. Hi.
So just a little bit about the format. We're not live. We are pre-recording this. I'm planning on doing as little editing as possible, God willing. We have an outline, but that's about it.
Yeah, so these are cases that we talk about anyway. So essentially, we're just letting the listeners in on our conversations, which is super fun.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, we were like in each other's earbuds, like almost all day. And we were like, why is this not a show?
Exactly. Well, we have a lot of insight. I mean, you more than anyone. You put your detective cap on and you want to solve whatever it is. So it seems logical that you'd talk to someone with similar interests about it, your friends.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to start by telling listeners our origin story. True crime podcasting really did bring us together, and it's been a match made in murder heaven ever since.
It's true. We do talk daily. Certainly enough intrigue going on around the globe for us to keep our true crime conversations going.
Yes, there are so many cases. They're constantly, every day, a new murder case hits the headlines, and sometimes it's one that we'll talk about instantly, and other times it's like an older case that has stayed on our minds for a long time, and we're still wondering about. So we'll do a mix of some new cases and some unsolved cold cases.
Yeah, it's always nice too when the media picks up on something, or it's a anniversary of a disappearance or a murder, and the news is talking about it. Kind of gets everyone's interest going again.
Definitely. So I'll set the scene. Let's talk about how we first met. I was working on Final Days on Earth and just consuming as much true crime content, podcasts as I possibly could. I was so immersed in this new world of podcasting since I'd worked in television. I was a producer for 48 Hours on CBS News, and I had just gotten into sort of the podcasting game. And so I was listening to Complicit, and it was such a great podcast, so well written. I will tell you, I had gone to a serial killer trial in Oklahoma City, as one does, and I had gotten there, and I had to get back to Dallas. It was a long, crazy story, but I had flown into Oklahoma City from some other location. And I didn't have a car to get back home. And so I was looking at how was I going to get home? The flights were insane. The most economical option was to actually take an Uber from Oklahoma City to Dallas. I was like, well, I have all this time in the back of the car. What am I going to listen to? And I started binge listening to Complicit. And by the time I got to my doorstep, I was like, I just want to reach out to this podcast and say bravo, because I love your writing and I think it's so well done. And not every true crime podcast, has that ability to really capture your attention and keep you listening episode after episode. So I reached out to the show and I got connected to you because you were one of the writers. And we started talking.
Yeah, it was it was definitely unexpected. And that was in COVID too. So no wonder you couldn't find a flight. I mean, there were very few flights going, and Uber was probably your safest bet at the time. The creators and hosts of the show, Caitlin and Hillary, forwarded your email my way. I had worked with them on crafting the arc, the narrative of the show, which is something I love to do, which fast forward I've helped you with Final Days on Earth. But yeah, that show and that crime and the disappearance of Lauren DeMolo, which is what Complicit covers, was just fascinating. And there were so many moving parts that it was a great challenge to put everything cohesively into one story. So Caitlin and Hillary did an amazing job of telling the story, and I just finessed it along the way for them. But they were doing a lot of digging. So, and I think they still are. So it's going to be really exciting to talk about that on this show one day, whenever, we have some resolution in that case. It is still an open case.
So for those listeners who may not be familiar with Complicit and what case it covers, can you give us a little tease?
Sure. It's about the mysterious and just out of the blue disappearance of a woman named Lauren DeMolo. She was 29 at the time of her disappearance from Cape Coral, Florida, in 2020. So again, height of COVID. And she just disappeared one morning. And the story is a serialized show. Complicit follows her case through the eyes of those closest to her, through her family, through her friends, and through the investigation as it's happening. So, you're introduced to characters, you're introduced to suspects, you're introduced to a lot of red herrings, and it remains unsolved to this day. It is, to my knowledge, the only outstanding missing persons case in Cape Coral. And yeah, there's just a lot of surprises along the way. But I will say, getting that email and then speaking to you, Claire, was like a highlight of my life because, of course, I'm like, wow, someone from 48 Hours, a producer from 48 Hours wants to talk to us, me, you know what? And so it was like, wow, you walk on water and then you become friends with this person. So it's just been this amazing growth of our friendship, but really grounded in such a common interest.
Yes, it is so funny to me that whenever I first reach out to you, I thought that you were a young journalist. I thought that you were a fellow, journalist who had found this case and wanted to report it because you had such journalistic writing and styles, and everything about it was very reporterly. And so I was really surprised to learn that you were older than me, that you had a very long, successful career in marketing, and that this was just a passion for you. And I really feel like in another life you were a reporter because you have that journalistic DNA, and it's been so fun to get to talk to you about cases, as true crime podcasters and get to explore them together because so many, of the cases that I'm interested in, you've looked at too. So it's just been really fun. I feel like I found my true crime bestie across the world.
Yep. Every time even when we sit down to write a season of Final Days, it's sort of like, well, how do we tell this story? How do we make it compelling? How do we make it something that we would want to listen to? Because I feel like we have a very high barrier, high quality barrier. I mean, we really expect a lot out of our true crime podcasts, especially the serialized ones. So yeah, I feel thank you. And back at you because you are such a gifted journalist and I've learned a lot from you.
Well, we have to talk about how we actually met in person because that is
Yes.
a pretty funny story. So I had a trip coming up to come to New York for 48 hours, and we were doing a screening of one of my episodes, and I needed to actually travel to New York with a cop. This happens a lot, where you need to sort of go with the character. That's what we call them in true crime television. Everyone who appears on TV who doesn't work for the network is a character. So sometimes you have to accompany the character to New York. They've never been there before. They're not gonna probably get on that plane and fly alone and then try to navigate the city on their own. So that's something that I would do. I would fly with victims' families. I'd fly with police officers, attorneys, all sorts of people, sometimes former suspects. I would fly with to New York.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It is pretty wild. And so this was one of
Wait,
those
actually,
times.
sorry. I have to cut you off and just explain to everyone that you're like 5 feet tall. Okay. Like the fact that picturing you flying with a suspect and like you are just so, you have such like gravitas and bravado about you. And like then you pair that with your physical stature, it just absolutely cracks me up because you would never expect it.
It is really funny. I often say, like, I wouldn't even know how to go through life if I was tall. Like, I've always been a short person and a small person, and it just is like part of my personality that, dynamite comes in small packages. And so that's just kind of how I roll. But it is a funny image. And with this cop in particular, he's like over 6 feet tall, and here I am, his handler for the trip, right? So I get to New York and I've told you that yes, I'm going to be in town, I'm going to be in the city, let's meet up. And so we made these plans to meet up in Midtown, I think it was.
Mhm.
And I was so excited. And then I sheepishly had to tell you, I'm going to bring a cop with me.
Yeah. I mean, but by the way, you like made all my dreams come true because I knew who he was. You had positioned him so well. Here he is, someone who is going to appear in a 48 hours episode. Here you are, a 48 hours producer. I mean, I'm living my best life.
It was so funny. And so I don't tell, I tell the cop, yeah, we're meeting a friend, And so we go, we meet you, we have a blast. We ended up talking for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
We practically shut that place down and it was so great. We just picked up, like old friends, so much so that whenever we left and I said goodbye to you and I'm walking with a cop, he was like, so that's one of your best friends?
Oh,
And I
yes.
had to tell him, I said, well, actually, that's the first time we've ever met in person. And he about blew his lid and said, you brought me to meet a stranger on the internet? And it was so great because it was so far out of his comfort zone. It was hilarious. And I was like, well, she wasn't really a stranger. I knew her from true crime podcasts. And he was like, that does not make it better, Claire. Like he was really giving me the business. So I got a great kick out of that. You would think, if I brought a cop to the meeting, like I was looking for backup, I was worried about you, but I wasn't. I just had to bring him. I was traveling with this guy. I couldn't very well leave him at the hotel and be like, all right, see you later.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty funny way to get to know each other and yeah, I'll definitely never forget that.
It was very funny. I also remember we both just proactively, because we don't drink, so we ordered water, and here he is pounding whiskeys. And we were like, well, okay, go for it, dude. Like it was, I don't
Yeah,
know,
that
that just struck out to me too.
that made it even better. Yeah, we're drinking our soda water with lime or whatever it might have been. And
Yeah.
yeah, he's going for the hard stuff. And so it was pretty entertaining just if you've ever been the sober person in a bar, it's actually a good time, I think. I enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we connected there too. So that
We
was fun.
did. Yeah, and we hadn't even talked about that, so that was really funny.
Yeah.
So if you're listening right now, you probably know about Final Days on Earth, but just in case, that was my first podcast, and it has 3 seasons, deep dives on cold cases. And Susan helped me write on the second and third season of that, and that's really how we really started working together. Went from friends to coworkers in the second season of Final Days on Earth.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. You know, your knowledge and depth of cases is just extraordinary because it was your job for so long. So I really admired that you wanted to go deeper on cases that you felt weren't quite told properly or resolved well enough in that, you know, whatever short time you have on television, and the ones that kept you up at night, and the ones you thought, wow, maybe we can actually make a difference in this case. Maybe it wasn't solved properly, or, you know, whatever it is. I just thought that was such a phenomenal approach to your show.
Well, thanks. I mean, the first season, we had Damien Hurd, where the case was ruled, spoiler alert, it was ruled non-criminal. It was considered a suicide. And so that case, we were looking at it from the perspective of, did the police go down every trail that they should have? Did they talk to everyone that they should have? Did they ask the right questions? Did they get any answers that, would really solidify this ruling? And so that is a long and winding road that we went down. I think it ended up being 17 episodes, which I never would have imagined when I started, but people kept reaching out to me. That was, one of those cases where people just came out of the woodwork to talk. And so I really tried to talk to everyone who reached out to me, and it just took a lot of twists and turns, and I was really glad to get to explore that in depth. And then in season 2, the Jennifer Harris case, that is a case that was ruled a homicide and has been unsolved, cold case, for over 20 years now. It was 2002 when she disappeared and then was found a week later in the Red River. And so that case, we're looking at some potential suspects, but there's no question that it was a murder. So that, that one differed there. And then in season 3, we looked at the life and death of Greg Williams, who was a successful tech entrepreneur who died in his own home. And his wife calls 911 and says that there's been an intruder in the house. And it sets off this wild investigation, not only into Greg's murder, but into other men who died within Michelle Williams' orbit. She was married to Greg, but it was not her first relationship by any means. It was actually her third marriage, and she'd had many other long-term relationships and common law marriages and all sorts of things with a lot of very tragic circumstances surrounding it. So we got to go into that case, and it definitely went places that I didn't expect.
Yeah, a lot of that was surprising to me too, because it's sort of like, well, there's another twist. Wow, there's another twist. And it was just such a complicated case that at the end of the day has a very simple answer. So I just found that resolution so interesting.
Yes, it was one of the cases that had some, a higher level of satisfaction than the previous 2 seasons, because we actually do find out what happened to Greg Williams nearly exactly. But it did open up other mysteries in Michelle's wake that are unsolved and unknown. And to this day, people wonder, if she's responsible for more than just the death of Greg Williams. Are there other victims out there?
Yeah, what I actually especially loved about that case and your point you just made was the family and those very close to the case had suspicions. And then using this Final Days on Earth as the platform, it just shines a much huger, brighter light on the whole thing. So it gets, more people thinking, oh, wow, could that have happened? And is she responsible? And, from a previous murder to a murder after Greg while she was out on bail. And everyone should just go listen to that case or re-listen if you've listened already. There's a lot to it.
Definitely. And Michelle's family, Greg's family, they have told me that having the podcast, and I also did an episode of 48 Hours, 2 episodes actually, on Michelle Williams' case, that really was so validating for them because they had felt alone in their suspicions of Michelle and what she was capable of. And like they were the crazy ones for saying, that this woman is not who she appears to be. And so it was really vindicating for them to get to put it out at a national level and say, this woman ruined our lives and, we'll never be the same. And, there's a lot that can't be done about that. That's, irreversible, but sometimes just naming the thing really helps, to say this is what happened to me and to take kind of back that power and say, despite all the convoluted ways she tried to lie and twist and manipulate, like these are the facts. This is what really happened.
Exactly. And, I think it really, I think it brings a level of resolution in some way. But I also think not to pat ourselves on the back, but what we do really well is present facts and not our own opinions. And opinions that are shared are from witnesses or firsthand connectors to the case, connections to the case. So, everyone listening can get a very close, I don't know how to say it, they feel intimate with the case. But, we're not inserting our opinions in any way, shape, or form. We just want to report on, from using those who are around it at the time.
Yeah, I really want people to draw their own conclusions about these cases and take in all the information and decide, what they think happened, especially in cases, where there's a lot of unresolved information, they can decide for themselves what they think really happened. And, that's sort of a satisfying journey to go on. It's always nice to know that someone, was held responsible for a crime, that they're in prison, but you don't always get that. And so sometimes the only resolution you can get is in your own head for what you believed happened, and having a story that makes sense and that you can say, well, we might not get what would traditionally be considered justice or closure in this case through the legal system, but at least now I feel like I know what happened. And sometimes that's what loved ones get. In Michelle Williams' case, they kind of got a mixed bag because they got her in prison. Again, spoiler alert for Greg's murder, but not, for others that they feel like she's responsible for. So
yeah. And I think the the contrast to that is the Jennifer Harris case, where after you listen to that season, there's probably, a good amount of angry people out there that justice hasn't been served. So
definitely, I hear from them all the time that they cannot believe that there's never been an arrest in that case.
Yeah. 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 Again, go back and listen to all of them. Love it.
So it was really back in 2022 when I bit the bullet and quit my job at CBS News that we first started talking about doing a podcast together.
Yeah. And not just writing one that was sort of an extension of a 48 Hours case, but one like this, like just fun talking.
Yeah. A lot has happened since I left CBS News. And probably the biggest development is that I wrote a book, Killer Story, The Truth Behind True Crime Television. Comes out February 2025. You can pre-order it now everywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop, whatever is your favorite.
And I'll just say I really enjoyed helping you with that book. It is your book. It is your baby. But you were so great. I'm so grateful you allowed me to help you give it the once over, because that was super fun. It's such a good book. I can't wait for everyone to read it.
It really was a blast writing that with you. I mean, I felt like we got into such a groove. It was like we said we were sharing the same brain wavelength. Like I would start something and you would finish it, in the old cliche. But it was really rewarding to work on that. It's not easy to write with another person, and it's not something in my career that I've been able to do very often. So it's just funny. I remember one time you and I were working on something. I want to say it was like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, which is rare for us. We're not night owls, and we weren't usually doing this, but for some reason we'd been working out some story problem or whatever it was, and we were both in the Google Doc in the evening, and my husband came into my office and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm writing with Susan." And he was like, "It's just amazing that you two found each other."
It is. It really is. I'm sort of the same. I would call myself a great editor, more so than original content, if that makes sense. So I think that's where we really blend our skills well, because you have all this original content and ideas, and then I, can together we can make it sound a little bit more cohesive or put an arc in there, whatever it is. But our skills are really complementary.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that I would do a lot in Final Days and also on Killer Story. So I would be writing and writing and writing, and then I would be like, okay, I need to change topics, but I don't know how. So I would just put transition needed here and then go in straight into my next topic, and you would just wave your magic wand and come up with a perfect transition to get me from point A to point B.
See, it's perfect. Give me the transition challenge. That is one of my favorite things to do.
It's just, yeah, it really is so great. And people,
Yeah.
when I tell other writers about how we write together, they're so jealous because it's really rare to find someone who, has the complementary skills and does so well what you lack, and you're not at all, competing for this, trying to write the same thing. We have like this really great give and take, and it's just super fun to be able to write with someone who works so well with you.
Yeah, and good thing everyone can see all the evidence of this in Killer Story.
Yes, please go pre-order Killer Story now. Fun fact, next week I'm actually going to be recording the audiobook.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's going to come out simultaneously. The book, the ebook, and the audiobook will all be available February 18th, 2025.
Woohoo! Can't wait.
So let's give a little preview, a tease, if you will, about what's coming up in future episodes of Justice Pending.
All right. I mean, we have been compiling a list for what feels like a year or 10. I don't even know at this point. And so, yeah, I think this will be really fun. I think it's a lot of cases people have heard of, but also a lot maybe people have not, or have forgotten, or have been buried. No pun intended. So, yeah, very excited to get into it.
Yeah, there were so many cases that we would talk about, as potential fits for Final Days on Earth, or maybe for a future season of Complicit. But then we'd realize, they might not work in a long form, serialized investigative format, but they were still so interesting to us. And we wanted to talk about them in a different way. And so Justice Pending was born.
Yeah. It's a good format because, like you said, I mean, serialized cases are amazing, and especially the ones that go down rabbit holes and have those red herrings and have many characters and many options, or open up other murders along the way that have been undiscovered or unreported. But there's some that are just head scratchers that don't have a lot of information or don't have enough to make that dedicated podcast. So yeah, this is perfect for those.
So for our first case, our next episode, I want to talk about Missy Beavers, the
Hmm.
Dallas area fitness instructor who was killed while preparing for her regular early morning workout class in 2016.
Now that is a crazy case. And I mean, as you learn the details, that there's video surveillance, and oh, it's just terrifying. This is a terrifying one.
It's a case that I looked into extensively for CBS News as a producer for 48 Hours, and I have so many details on the investigation that I've never shared before because we ultimately didn't do an episode of 48 Hours on the Missy Beavers case. It's still unsolved, and there are lots of theories as to who may be responsible for her death.
Oof, yes. This is yeah, that's a heavy one for sure. For sure.
Okay, so Missing Beavers is my first case for justice pending. What's yours?
So I'm going to go to Oregon and I'm going to talk about Wendy DeHoop. Now, this is a case of from 2005. It's an old one. You know, at this point, it's aged not very well because, you know, Wendy DeHoop disappeared, has never been found. I don't know why I'm drawn to these missing persons cases, but she disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And like any good mysterious disappearance, when you start peeling back the layers on the missing person, she had a past. And the question is, did that past catch up with her? Or was she living in a present that was less than ideal? So that is another very interesting one with a lot of roads to explore.
And I remember that someone close to Wendy had reached out to us and asked if we could investigate this case. And you actually talked to her friend,
I did.
at length, got information about it. And we were both just so heartbroken for Wendy and for her friends. And yeah, really want to try to get the word out about her. Again, it's one of those cases that there's so many questions. And so we really will be putting things out there that we're, hoping that someone's going to come forward with some more information and can help bring, some resolution for her family and for her friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's still, I also reached out to the police, confirmed it's still an open case. So they haven't closed the book on it.
So other cases we have earmarked for the future. Ash Rowell. This is an unsolved murder out of Houston from 2013. Nicole Olson. This is a San Antonio case that was ruled a murder-suicide in 2019. And, there's also other cases that we will talk about. I have a lot in Texas because that's where I live. And I know that you have some in New York that have come up for you that are very interesting. And so, we won't be lacking for cases. That's for sure.
Definitely not. And I'd like to expand even beyond New York, because I've worked on Complicit, as we spoke about. I've also worked on Murder, She Told, written a few or helped Kristen Seavey write a few of her cases up. So yeah, there are a few going up and down the Eastern Seaboard that we can get into.
Absolutely. We can't wait to dive into these investigations with you and hear your thoughts. So go to justicepending.com and send a message on our contact page to share your opinions and theories and also to suggest cases that we should cover.
Yeah, we're open to any and all cases. We'd love to help get them on the map, so to speak.
Thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of Justice Pending. We're glad you're here.
Until next time, stay safe out there.
Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanamaw, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. All right, I think we did it.
Oh my God. I get so
You did
awkward.
so great. You were awesome.
Ugh.
I mean, we didn't have anything. We didn't have a trash truck. We didn't have a barking dog. We didn't have a door knock.
I know.
This is a great harbinger of good things to come that we would not be interrupted in our first episode recording. One funny little true crime adjacent anecdote that I may or may not use in the episode, but I got a notification in my email that I had just checked out a library book and I was at home and my whole family was at home. And so no one had checked out a library book on our account. So I was like, hold up. So I called the local library and I was like, hey, I'm not at the library. Someone just checked out a book on my account. And they were like, oh, we're going to freeze the account. This is like someone's gotten your card. And I know it was so funny how seriously they took it. First of all, library cards are free. There are no fines for late books anymore.
Right.
They completely eliminated it. So it's like a, kind of a victimless crime. And I'm assuming if they're checking out a library book, like they plan on bringing it back. I don't know. It just was so funny. It just cracked me up that there was like a library card thief on the loose.
Wait, we should talk about that in an episode.